In this video, I'd like to take a simple web page with some JavaScript and start sort of purposely making some errors and introduce the idea of debugging and bring in some techniques. The first thing I'd like to do is to open it, and we've been using Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to right click on this file. And when I do open with, or it's under edit, it's saying Notepad++. Under open with, it's giving me all my browsers, but not Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to say choose another app. And then it's saying here are my usual options, but I'm going to say do more options down here, and there's Visual Studio Code. And for now, I'll just say okay. It gives an option to always open it, but I don't know that I want to do that because it might open it always with the browser. But here it is opened in Visual Studio Code. Now I'm going to close it and see if I right click again, if Visual Studio Code comes up as an option. So it is now showing with a sort of an open with in the open with list. So it's there. It's not the automatic thing. It's still the browser is the automatic way to open this file, but it is at least in the list when I right click. Okay, so here's this program that we wrote previously. I'm going to, we also previously installed the live server. So I'm going to open this with the live server, which may be a mistake because I opened the file and not a folder. So let's see. So it is yelling at me saying, open a folder. Okay. So since this video is about making mistakes there, that was my first mistake. If I want to use the live server, I should open the folder. There it is, the JavaScript, select that folder. Now I have this file within that folder. And if I right click and say open with the live server, now I'm okay. It's opening with the live server. And so this little program here had two buttons. First button, and there's a span here, and that changes the text or the inner HTML rather of the first span, and then the second button becomes enabled, or it's disabled property is set to false, and then I can click on that, and then that changes the inner HTML of the second span. Okay, so let's start to make some possible mistakes. So let's say that I misspell the word function. Okay. So this type of error, there are some clues to it here in Visual Studio Code, that it has the sort of certain keywords that are in this sort of lighter blue. And when I misspelled the word function, it was no longer in light blue. So if you get used to these colors and you see that you don't have a color you're expecting, that is one clue. We also have this red squiggly here, and it's giving me not a very useful error message. It's telling me there's an error with the red squiggly, so that's nice, but it's not giving me a very useful error message. It's not really telling me what's wrong because it's telling me that a semicolon is expected. So that's one thing, is that the error messages are sort of where the program discovered the error. It's not always where the error is, and it's not always what the error is. So it's trying to help you, but don't take it too literally all the time. Don't go trying to slap a semicolon in here. That's not the problem. Okay, so what happens if I try to run it? it doesn't work. And so I can look for the error here in Visual Studio Code, and it's trying to help me with these red squigglies and this change in color. But so that's one place to look for things. And another place to look for things is over here in the browser. It doesn't look like it at this stage, but you can open what's known as the console. And I've opened this in Edge, or Visual Studio Code has opened this in Edge. And here's this little sign that I'm using the live server, so it's pretending it's a server. That's what all of this stuff is. Instead of saying C : to some location on my file system, it's doing this 127. So that's telling me it's pretending to be a server. Not that that's important for what we're talking about, but and I have, this is the same for, again, it opened in Edge. It is similar for Google Chrome. It's also similar for Firefox. Those are all the sort of same family of browsers these days. Safari on a Mac will be a little bit different, and I don't have that to show you, so I apologize for that. But if I right-click and choose Inspect, then this has different ways in which I can sort of look under the hood at this web page, and the one that I'm interested in is the console. So this appears in different places depending on the browser, but you can always sort of right-click. It's almost always the word inspect, and then it might appear at the bottom. It might appear on the side. I think Firefox is at the bottom. And then its console is where that tells you about the errors. So it's saying this fave icon thing often appears, and it's not really an issue. So if I were to refresh, that one goes away. Okay, now I have this, just the one error now showing, and it's telling me an unexpected identifier at 10, line 10. So again, it's getting me in the vicinity of the error. It's not sort of necessarily any better at telling me what the error is, but it is giving me the sort of region, or telling me where it's discovered. So the error would be typically here or above. Okay. So again, it's not telling me what the error is, just where the error is, or this is where the error first is seen. And let's use their lettering coloring, and there are two possible. So let's fix that one. Again, debugging is sort of hard, so it doesn't always, now that error is gone. It's gone from the console, it's gone from here. Now so function was a keyword, and we had to spell it right. First function is up to us, but it is, we need to be consistent that when we define the function up here in line 10, and when we call the function down in line 20, that we are consistent in terms of spelling and case. And so let me make the sort of similar mistake here, because I made my name of my function have the word function in it, which I normally wouldn't do, but this is sort of intro. So now I get, let me save that. Now you see that I don't have any hints from here in Visual Studio Code. But let me try to, and there's nothing here when I just refresh the page, but let me try to click the button. And then I get the comment that first function is not defined. Okay. It's telling me 57, which I don't understand 57. Okay, but it's telling me this function is not defined. And so now so here's where I'm calling the function, and here's where I'm defining the function, but it's saying it's not defined. And that is a clue that there is some breakdown in this communication. And the communication occurs just by spelling it the same. So that gives us our hint that, and we just know because we just forced this error. It's harder to find them when you didn't sort of make them on purpose. But there we go. So you can spend hours trying to find mistakes when you're not making them on purpose. But so now we've made two errors. We saw when we misspelled the keyword function that we saw indications both in Visual Studio Code and on the browser. When we misspelled the name of the function, we saw it only in the browser and not here. What else can we do sort of in this vicinity? We have things that open and close, like parentheses and curly brackets. So let's just sort of look and see some of the errors. So let's do that. So I had, now I'm missing a parenthesis. I get some indication here. It's a little bit subtle. I have these little red squigglies sort of here on line 2 on line 11 and 1 on line 14. So it's giving me some idea that there's a problem. And I can also over here, again, we see sometimes the error appears before I click on anything, and sometimes I need to click on something to see the error. And this is saying unexpected token dot in 11. And again, this is that idea that that's where it discovered the problem, but that's not necessarily the problem. We know what the problem is. We just took out this parenthesis from a perfectly working program. So we know that that's the problem, but this is where when trying to interpret your code, this is the first time it said, oh no, something's wrong. So this is that idea that the error might be above, might have come before this. So that is another idea to get used to. So don't come here and start getting rid of dots because it's told you something about not understanding a dot, but sort of also look above to sort of say, I know that dot makes sense. I was copying code and had that dot. That dot is good. So just this idea that the error is not always where it says the error is. What else can we not have? Let's take away the closing parenthesis there. And now let's try one thing, and we have formatting. And that didn't change much. Go back. It's an interesting idea. Let me see if I took out that parenthesis again, and if I formatted it. We see sometimes that's another help within Visual Studio Code is this formatting, and this auto formatting you can get by right-clicking, that we expect a certain sort of indentation scheme, and that those issues with the indentation can give us a clue about where things are going wrong. So it's another approach to help find things. So let's just see what the error message appears when I take out a curly bracket. So again, it's not giving me any clear indication here, or not much clear indication. Maybe it's giving me way down here. It's giving me some indication of a red squiggly on the HTML tag. And it's giving me some subtle indication here in that line 9 open script tag and line 15, the close script tag, are not the same color. So that's an indication over here in Visual Studio Code that something's wrong. And let's see what it has to say for itself over here on the browser. It's saying unexpected end of input in 15. So we're closing the script, but we haven't closed the function that's in the script. So the function is supposed to be inside the script, but the function didn't properly end because we're missing the curly bracket. And so the function should end before the script ends, and it knows that. And so that was an indication. Okay. What other things can we do wrong? We can misspell an ID. So we had to have the function spelled correctly, and so there's a big matching game in programming. You had to have the calling of the function and the definition of the function had to agree. Now we see that we're going to see that the ID of the element and the ID of the element referred to in code have to agree. So let me say fist instead of first or something. So now no indication here in code that there's any problem, all nice color coding and indenting, everything looks good, but this ID and this use of the ID don't match. So that's only going to be seen over in the browser. It's not the kind of error that comes up. It's not what we call a syntax error. It's not going to come up immediately, even before the program runs. It's going to be more a runtime error. We're going to see it as we try to run the program. And then it's saying, cannot set properties of null. Okay. So I'm in this, and we're saying that's in line 11. So in line 11, I have, what am I doing? I am going to the page, I'm getting an element by an ID, and then I'm trying to take its inner HTML property and set it equal to 1 potato. But it's saying here in the error message that I can't set the property of null. I'm not trying to set the property of null. I'm trying to set the property of SP first. But that's my clue, that I tried to get this element, but it's null. I can't change the property of this null element. So it's means I did not find this element. That's the null. I did not find that element, so I can't change its property. And now let's fix it. Okay. So we tried, what else can we do wrong in the function? We can, these are assignment statements. We are changing a property. What if we don't have one side of the assignment statement? So I just have it equals, but not what it equals. I have the disabled property set equal, and then I stopped. And So we see here some indication that this little red squiggly. And we see over here unexpected token. So I got to the semicolon here before, which is the end of my line, before the code ended. It saw this equal, it expects the rest of it, the other side of the equal, and it wasn't there. What if I say, oh, it, you know, it was okay with, it didn't like the semicolon, so let me take out the semicolon. Now I have no indication over here in Visual Studio Code. And I have no indication here when the program starts. But that one line of code, and it never did give me an error message. It's just that the second button never did become not disabled. So I didn't get an error message in either place, either in Visual Studio Code or on the browser in this case. But I just know that there was a runtime error and that it did not do what I wanted it to do. So sometimes a runtime error is a mistake the computer knows about it, and sometimes it's just a mistake that some user will know about, that you see that it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Other kind of mistakes. Let's not continue to talk about mistakes. So we talked about the color coding. We talked about indenting. We saw the red squigglies. We saw the messages in the console. Let's talk about two other ways to help us find mistakes. Which mistake do we want to make? Let's misspell second or something like that. Okay. So we have some mistake, and then it's giving us a good idea of what's wrong, but let's look at another approach to finding mistakes, and this is to use an alert. So I can say an alert is sort of a pop-up, and I can put in various alerts and then see which ones I see and which ones I don't see. So I know there's some problem with this function. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. And I can just alert out some words. And see which words I see and don't see as I run the program. So this is a very crude but effective method of debugging. So I hit my button first to call this function, and there it says hi. So hi works, there works, and then it stops. So hi and there it got to, but not after. So hi was okay, there was okay, and then it stopped. That tells me that the mistake was on this line. So the execution of that 10 worked. So down in 24 now, first function was called, that worked okay. We called the function up in 10, that was okay. We got the first alert, that was okay. We got 12, that was okay. 13 was okay. And then we did not get to 15, telling us that the problem was with 14, unless the problem was with the alert. So make sure you make your alerts correct. And let me do this another way. So if your interface is simple enough, then this can be an effective method to see all these alerts popping up. And when the alert stops, there's a similar approach called a console log. And I'll just do the same thing. Hi. Console log. There. Console log. Okay. And this is just similar idea, but just shows up in a different spot. And as it says, it shows up in the console, which we've been looking at. So there's my hi, and there's my hi in my console. There's my there, and then there's my there in the console, and then here's my error message. And so we have this similar idea. So if you want to sort of work sort of as a user, to have yourself sort of work as a user and see these alerts popping up, then that can be one way to debug to see how far you got before things went bad. And then console log is more of a behind the scenes hidden way to do the same. Console log is probably a more sophisticated way, but it forces you to sort of to open the console. We are doing what's called event-driven programming. So we have programs that you have an event, you click a button or some other thing, and the thing about the alert is that it is involving your interface and has its own events. The pop-up pops up, and then there's an OK button to close it. And so there are additional interactions, additional events. So in certain kind of subtle errors, you can be hiding the problem or making new problems by introducing the alert. So the console is more behind the scenes, a nicer problem, a nicer way to handle it, and that doesn't cause issues. Okay, so I think that's enough of making mistakes for now. So I thank you for your attention.